Hey, this is Lenny Rabbits. I want to bring you one of my parables, analogies, whatever you want to call it, lessons. This is the ant parable. I love this one. Okay, created and brought to you by yours truly. Just have to say that. Anyway, the ant parable is a analogy that proves the falseness of atheism. And it's pretty simple. It goes like this. You have an ant who is going about his day doing ant things, which in many respects are very complex. Surviving in the colony, supporting the colony, doing all those sorts of things. They're complex, but they're also very limited. When you compare them to a human, for example, an ant's ability to do things is very simple and limited. At any rate, an ant decides that he is going to very, very briefly break from the colony for just a moment, break from his work, gathering food. And he peers through the forest and he looks deep into the forest and he sees through the distance maybe what we know as a city. But to the ant, it's alien. It's completely foreign. What is that? I mean, first of all, his compound eye has a difficult time even kind of making out what it is. Its eye has evolved to look at, its stuff, its food, its colony, its ant mates. Anyway, he looks at it, and for a brief moment, he tries to fathom what that is. What is outside and beyond the forest? Just for the briefest of moments. And he can't. He can't see what it is, and he can't understand what it is. It's that far away. It's that foreign. It's that alien. That is the analogy right there for human beings looking out into space. Okay? Now, astronomers don't like to hear things like this because astronomers look through their technology and their huge telescopes and all of their computers. They look out into space and they pick apart and they parse and they analyze and examine and they try to understand what they're seeing, and they do understand what they're seeing to an enormous extent. They understand many pieces and parts of what they're seeing, and they create words for what they're seeing. They create an entire lexicon of things for what they're seeing, different quasars and galaxies and stars and supernova and all sorts of things. And so in a lot of respects, these astronomers and people, regular people, are way more advanced than the ant looking out beyond the forest. Okay? Because that ant looking out beyond the forest probably, in my opinion, probably doesn't even know what a skyscraper really is, nor can it fathom what a skyscraper is. So that's the astronomers looking out into space and looking and trying to understand all of those pieces. And like I said, they do understand a lot of those pieces. We do understand many of those pieces. But as far as the totality, the city that is space, okay? And the buildings, all the buildings and lights and all those little things, the stars and all of the black holes, and all those little things, and they can pick them apart and piece them together and do all sorts of stuff, but they cannot fathom the whole. And I can't fathom the whole either. Okay, this is not a I'm so smart and they're so dumb thing. I can't fathom the whole, they can't fathom the whole, because we're the ant when we look into outer space and try to fathom the whole. We cannot fathom the whole of the universe as human beings. We cannot fathom the whole of the universe. The best we can do is look and relate to, through our own ant eyes, through our own stuff, through what we do on a daily basis. And yes, that includes some very advanced technology that gives us very advanced insights. But we cannot and we will not ever be able to fathom the whole. And I think, honestly, a very large piece of that and part of that is just due to sheer mass versus sheer just, I don't want to say infinite space, because I think that's kind of a misleading thing, but it's very possible that it's due in large part to the sheer size differential. So, the same sort of thing as looking into an atom, okay, and the behavior of an atom. And can you fathom that tiny thing? Can you fathom that in the way it works and operates? And no, you can't. And just as a side note, I just want to debunk something really quick as a little side note to this little analogy or parable. It amazes me, and it still amazes me today, that in many universities, many scientific arenas, they still teach the quantum physics experiments in which some scientists tried to pinpoint where they thought an electron might be at any given point in time. And they used big technology, they used big machines, they used chemical reactions, all sorts of things to try to pinpoint where they thought the particle of an electron would be at any given time. And the best that they came up with was that it is, not only is it very difficult to do that, but it also depends on essentially where you happen to be looking. And the premise of that entire experiment is so bad and so wrong that I just have to debunk it right now. Because here's the thing. An electron is not a particle. An electron is not a particle any more than heat is a particle, or temperature in its smallest unit is a particle. An electron is not a particle. It's the amount of electricity, okay, that's the best word I can use to describe it, the amount of electricity shelling that mass, that atom, that proton and neutron. That's what an electron is. It's not a particle, and it never was a particle. But somewhere along the lines in the study of chemistry, in particular chemistry and physics, they sort of forgot that what they were actually doing when they first came up with the periodic table and they first figured out, we have one electron, we have two electrons, we have three. They forgot that those were essentially supposed to represent just an approximation of the amount of electricity that was existing outside of that atom. So the amount of electricity existing outside of that hydrogen is roughly equal to 1. Okay? The amount of electricity that's existing outside of that oxygen particle is roughly 8. I think it's 8. Yeah, it should be 8. Yeah. Oxygen 8, nitrogen 7, carbon 6. Okay? For oxygen is roughly 8. Okay? But this is not this is not a particle. But it's amazing to me that somewhere along the lines, and it was, between 1850 and 1960, they forgot the origins of what the whole point of numbering electrons was, which was to better figure out what chemicals do. Okay? And they tried to figure out because again, the major mistake was believing that an electron being number 1 or number 2 or number 3 was not simply an abbreviation of what it represented, which was an amount. You have a hydrogen atom, you have roughly 1 part of electricity surrounding it. You have a uranium atom, and how many electrons do you have roughly surrounding that? 235. Now that's not a number of particle electrons, 235 electrons, which I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it's an approximation of the volume of electricity that's surrounding that uranium atom. Okay? And so it's very important to understand. This relates to our ant here. And I'm not trying to simply limit, people's search for truth, search for reality. I'm not trying to limit that at all. And that's where I've received some pushback in the past, where they're like, "Hey, don't rain on my parade. I'm a nuclear scientist. Don't rain on my parade. Saying that I can't pinpoint where an electron is, or I'm an astronomer and I can't, I can't tell you about the totality of the Milky Way galaxy and what it means and everything like that. Don't rain on my parade." Hey, you're a tenured professor, you have papers to write them. That's fine. But in terms of the cold, hard truth, and it doesn't have to be cold and hard, but the real truth, that's the real truth. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to tell you. And if you do understand it, you're going to be a lot better off for it. And I hope you can relate that to my point about atheism as well. You can't understand that totality. You cannot. Again, my theory is that it's possibly just due to size. How can I understand as an ant the size of a galaxy? How can I possibly fathom that? It's too big. The size differential is too big. I can understand my ant situation. I'm good at understanding that. And last point again, this doesn't mean don't investigate, don't discover it. No, I want you to. I want you to investigate and discover and learn the truth. Okay? All right, this is Lenny Ravitz. Thanks for listening to that parable. I hope you learned something from it.